Well, thank you for coming, everyone. We will go ahead and get started. There will still be people coming in. We're expecting a good little number. We saw a lot of people registered. I'm Shauna Lawson. I'm the Assistant Director for Alumni Relations and Annual Giving at UW Tacoma. Thank you for coming to our virtual alumni speaker series. We are excited to have you. Before we get started, I wanted to see if Dr. Sheila Edwards-Lang would like to have some remarks.
Thank you. Thank you so much for all the hard work that you do, Shauna, for us. Just appreciate it so much. Welcome to this lecture series. I should say this is my first one. I've been on campus now 6 months, and I continue to be impressed by the quality of our students and our alumni, and then the amazing things that they are doing out in the world. I sent Sean a note a couple months ago and said, put me on the list so that I can spend more time learning about our alumni and just the incredible work that they're doing. So thank you for the invitation tonight. I'm looking forward to the talk, and then looking forward to engaging more even after the lecture. So welcome.
Thank
everyone.
you, Chancellor Lang. All right, so with that, we usually start with the Share the Land acknowledgement, and I'm the one that usually does that. But tonight, our featured speaker, Jeff Dade, has his Share the Land acknowledgement that he would like to share. So with that, we'll do that, but we'll also give you some notes once he's done about how things will work in Zoom, and we'll go from there. Jeff Dade.
Thank you. Encouraged by tribal leaders among the Squamish, Anishinaabe, Tobique, Algonquin, and Mohawk nations to personalize acknowledgements, in 2022, I offer this dedication. I know that we exist in a time of profound reckoning with the pain and tragedies that have created our society. I identify as Black American, and with pride I stand with my ancestors whose very blood, bone, flesh, and skill are the wealth that created and secured this nation. In the face of centuries of entrenched anti-Black discrimination, harm, and induced inferiority, I dedicate my vocation to countering bigotry, the reclamation of Black heritage, and recognizing the full spectrum of Blackness. I am aware of the Puyallup tribe and other Coast Salish people who since the beginning of time have cared for and lived on the land I stand on today. I understand that their removal was forced and that this living community continues to fight to live in their ancestral homes. I invest in reckoning with Black and Latine socioeconomic well-being, stopping Asian and Pacific Islander and LGBTQ+ hate, and inviting white allies to decenter whiteness as we all recomprehend what should be to discover new futures for our children. I promise to be a positive force for pro-social equity. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. So we ask that everyone remains muted during the interview. After the interview, if there is time, we will take questions via the chat, or you can come off of mute. If you experience any technical difficulties, please note it in the chat and we will assist. I'll now turn this over to our interviewer, Vanessa Umana, our student, teacher assistant, and research assistant from the School of Urban Studies. Thank you, Vanessa.
Thank you, Shauna. Thank you everyone for joining us this evening. Our alumni speaker is Jeff Dade, and he is a dreamer who learned to lead. He goes by JD. He is a community real estate developer, accredited financial counselor, and a regional leader in the movement for racial economic equity, who serves as the director of community development and nonprofit for Terra Northwest. Growing up in a working class active duty military family eventually brought Jeff to Washington. Here he grew to become a business banker, mortgage lender, and a DEI consultant, and more. He has worked to create innovative bridges to wealth in the private, government, and nonprofit sectors, including positions at Fortune 500 firms with federal entities in the academia. Over the last 3 decades, Jeff has held over 300 million in assets under management, instructed whole battalions as a subject matter expert, and created multiple direct services programs for financial well-being across the Puget Sound. Today, Jeff Dade is devoted devoted to participatory community genius in the built environment. His active sites in Tacoma and Tequila prioritize Blackness as they foster inclusive, restorative economics, and pro-social solutions like social impact investing, green tech, and cooperatives. Proud to contribute to the 150-year strong Black community in Hilltop and East African immigrant refugee households in Tequila, he is a passionate advocate for anti-displacement via community-driven design and Black ownership as the people face transit-induced displacement. Jeff's top priority is to partner with locals for near-term solutions to the racial wealth gap, to secure sustainable, attainable access to mixed-use multifamily housing models that reinforce resilient wealth. He also holds advanced degrees emphasizing community, economic development from the University of Washington, graduating with a Bachelor of Arts in Urban Studies with a minor in Law and Policy in 2011, and graduating in 2020 with a Master of Arts in Community Planning. He serves as a board director for Green Trike, aka the Children's Museum of Tacoma. Jeff is also a fellow with the Environmental Leadership Program at the American Leadership Forum. He's been married for 23 years. He loves R&B playlists, enjoys fantasy movies, and thinks commercials are interesting. Jeff works a lot, but whenever possible, he is reading or catching up with his 4 daughters and 3 grandkids, who he secretly hopes will be dreamers too. So for our first question, could you tell us about the work that you do as a community real estate developer and an accredited financial counselor?
For sure. Thanks for asking, Vanessa. And I would say that all of my work when I do, well, I'll answer it in the order that you said. So as in Hilltop and Tequila, we are building, me and my team, I could not do it alone. We are partnering with community. And in both areas, one of the things that my organization does is we come in when we're invited. So we don't go in, and that really, it goes together with the what my professors taught me and the things that I've seen in the world, this idea of not doing the expert model. That's something really a big thing for me, and then also to understand about the work that we do. If you look at, for example, the Hilltop sub-area plan versus the Design the Hill. I don't know if you're familiar with this work, the audience, I think I see some people who definitely would be. Vast differences in how those came out. And one's very traditional, one's very pro-social and forward. So we go with the latter. So are always operating at this higher end of the, what they call Arnstein's ladder, this idea of very centered citizen control. So, or I should say resident control. So yeah, really my work to give the easier version, because it's a mouthful, is really going in to partner with communities and listening to community genius. They know what's going on. I call it the thank you model. So historically, development comes in and says, we're the experts, you're welcome, I'll wait for my thank you, we out. And they leave, right? And then the folks that they work with, I mean, this is anywhere from, there's international versions of this and definitely so much history here in the States of how that works out. But we pride ourselves in not doing that. And I would say one of the big things it makes sense probably with folks who know this industry or know how things work. It costs money to listen. I'll say that. So that's one of the things that I love that we get to do, that we have this, this robust pre-development space, but to have that much of a lead time, it costs you money, right? But it's so worth to have that type of investment in this work because it's for the community. And the whole point is to listen to them, not just come in with their own agenda. So that's what I do with my job. And then the way that my accredited financial counseling works, I have long background in banking. And when I was making my transition, although I didn't know it at the time, when I was making my transition out of banking into what I do today that I didn't know existed at the time, the bridge for me was financial counseling and coaching. And so I did that for a number of years for the federal government in particular, and then also in Hilltop and for, great organization called Sound Outreach, and also for United Way. of Pierce County, and the financial counseling was really this bridge from kind of hardcore, traditional Main Street banking type situation to helping the people kind of think about like a CFP for the rest of us. That's what an AFC can fulfill, right? And so helping folks that are like people that I grew up with. I come from absolute working class. I'm proud of that. And I always think when I was able to be in, the ivory tower of banking, a lot of the things that are available, they're not rocket science, right? It's just they're not accessible. And I always thought about, man, if my folks would have known just part of this, and they did pretty well. But there was a school of hard knocks versus when you have a family that has, that's already resilient and has access to this information. It takes you light years ahead. So I would say that in a nutshell is what I do. And I'm really interested in, like you had said, Vanessa, near-term solutions to the racial wealth gap. And my belief, as much as it's way more expensive to do so, is really it's recreating the wealth engine that, for example, post-World War II, that our country saw. We created this ownership, GI Bill, VA loans, all the subsidies that were there, highways, all the things that you learned about in urban studies. Shameless plug. We want to create those for folks that didn't get those. So my grandparents did not get that. My greats didn't get that. It was available, but not. It depended on what your melanin level was, right? That's my answer.
Right. Thank you for that. I am curious about transit-induced displacement. What is this and what does advocacy look like around this issue?
Yeah. So transit-induced displacement, I feel like it's something that doesn't get spoken at. Well, it gets spoken about, but not with those terms. On this, of the 17 that are here, there are absolute experts that are watching and listening to me right now. I'm aware of this. And I would say that, yeah, I see you. Really when you think about, I guess it all starts with transit-oriented development. This idea that, which in Tacoma is really interesting because we had the history is that we had a really great cable car system at one point, right? When you look at the history, and they ripped them out with the Fordist movement, and now here we are again, and we're putting it back in. It's like this great idea. That said, transit-oriented development, or in our case, I'll speak to Tacoma. We have the Link Light Rail. It's been around. If you go to UW-T, you probably know what it is because it's right there in front of campus, right? It's just part of how we get around town. There is an extension that's coming up all the way to Hilltop. And what that means is for folks, it's going to be a new way you can get around town, that it won't necessarily be free. That's a thing that's a whole other conversation, that the fare is being included at the time that it comes into a Black neighborhood, other conversation. But for whoever gets to stay, it can be a great tool. It will be a great tool. The problem is that historically, when transit-oriented development comes in, it comes along with these massive market forces because it's super convenient, and people that want that, especially if you're in a neighborhood that's been disinvestment or just has not received the investment. And it turns out, so if you're in downtown, I call it downtown Hilltop, where my site is at 11th and MLK, right there. If you live on a street named MLK, Martin Luther King Jr., if it has his name in there, it is likely that you are Black, and it's likely that you are low income. And like I said, there's over 900 streets that way. And Hilltop is not, it follows suit in this space. And so when we talk about transit-induced displacement, the idea is that all these market forces come along with the convenience and because TOD isn't inherently bad. It's just that it's so good that other people want it, and it drives up the prices, all around. And all it takes, if anyone wants to check this out, if you go on Zillow and do a search in the radius for Hilltop, then the numbers are daunting. They're daunting, right? And you would think, oh my gosh, like I see a 7 at the beginning of some of these. You know what I mean? So if you are, and yet we have, probably I'm going too far for the question that you said, Vanessa, but to conclude, one of the realities is that, we have spaces as a lot of folks that are here will be familiar with, and some of you wrote it, what's called ALICE, is Asset Limited Income Constrained Employed. So the easy way to think about that, that's a classification that that United Way with many experts put together nationally. And the idea is that if you put it in JD terms, I work in my household, we work hard, right? Me, my spouse, maybe another person in our household, but all the work that we do, we don't make a living wage, or we're barely there. So much so that we don't have, because of the cost of living and the lack of wage growth that has happened over years, we do not have the ability to develop surplus, right? And so if I have no surplus, I can't do a savings account. I may or may not have good credit, because if I have access to credit, I need to use that bad boy a lot, or maybe I'm using predatory lending. There's all types of things that go in that make it a really precarious, the opposite of resilient. You're not solvent, and that financially solvent in this situation. And so we see all those things go together when you look at the displacement factor, and you're already in a community that's lagging behind with regard to income, education, typically lack of property ownership, things like that. So when the market force comes in, it is that much more likely that you're going to be ousted because you just cannot afford to stay. Did I hit the whole question?
Thank you for that. Can you tell us about Green Trike, what it is, and how you became a board member there?
Yes, I would love to tell you about Green Trike. So Green Trike, also known, Green Trike is a new name for the Children's Museum of Tacoma and Joint Base Lewis McChord, proud to say. And Green Trike is this really cool idea. It is the only pay-as-you-will children's museum in the nation. Last time I checked, thus far, right? So what that means is if you go in and you don't have money, you get to still play. You get to still learn. But if you do, definitely appreciate your support too, because it's not free to maintain, right? But the idea that everyone, it's really this equitable solution to education and kids at play and adults, families, and belonging, right? And I would say one of the things I'm really proud of is that Green Trike, with really like a 7-year effort with the Joint Base Lewis McChord, established the only children's museum on a military installation in the world. And it is a gargantuan effort. But if you ever get a chance, if you have a homie that can get you on post, you need to go, because it is amazing, state of the art. I want to play. I take my grandsons there, and I'm like, can you watch them here? Because I want to get on the paper airplane shooter. It's just an amazing space. But really, Green Trike is all about kids at play. It really focuses on our youth, which has honestly been really unique for me, because I had an epiphany about 2 years ago. As I have 4 daughters, mostly grown. So they're, how old are they? 26, 22, 21, and 16. And then I have 3 grandkids under 3. And as much as kids, there's a time in my life where I had their little girls run around, that was just part of my life, right? And sometimes I miss that, but it's good to be grown also. But the reason I say that is because I think for most of my life, my work and who I was at work, what I did at work and what I did at home are really different things. And in the last couple of years, I realized maybe this is just mortality, new kind of an enlightenment for myself with my own mortality. But the bulk of the work that I am engaged in, I will not get to see the end of. I'm not going to finish it, right? And so it occurred to me that really the work that we're doing, Forterra and all the great partners otherwise that are building around the country, and particularly in Tacoma, we're not going to see it, and the work is about kids. At the end of the day, I'm helping to build these 4 buildings in the heart of Hilltop. That's going to be mixed use, multifamily. There's going to be kids that come down and they get to go to SOTA on the link, the School of the Arts, et cetera, downtown, because they're in space to have access to it. And that's something, I think that's where the piece with children has really come up for me, and just realizing. And when I had that realization, it just so happened that one of my professors reached out to me who was a board member and president, one of the leaders, and said, what do you think? I think that you would be a great match for Green Trike. Would you consider it? Let's talk. And at first I was thinking, do I have time to be on the board? All these kind of things. And when I put it together with my newfound realization, and I knew a couple of folks that were on the board already, I realized I have to take this. I need to do this because it's just this understanding that children are really what my work is. I don't know if that sounds odd, but it was a major paradigm shift for me. That's what I actually do, because I think finance and climate / equity solutions, and those don't really match with kids typically in my mind's eye. So that was how that progressed, and I've been doing that for, I think I'm in my second year now. So it's been a great ride so far.
That's great to hear. And so when you were deciding on universities, why did you choose UW Tacoma?
Interesting. I would say, so a lot for me, when I was younger, when I was 17, I grew up in Puyallup, and I still live in South Hill area today. But I went when I was 17 to Pacific Lutheran University on scholarship. Music, actually, all these, that trombone back there, it's just for show now because I have zero chops, but it got me through PLU. I get paid for most of my PLU. So it's a big deal for me, so I can't give it away yet. But I didn't finish. So when the Gulf War happened, my father went to the Gulf and my parents asked me to come back home, which was just, Puyallup to Parkland is not that long, if you didn't know that. But what I ended up doing, I stopped going to school and I started working. Met a girl, had some kids, got into banking, life happened. And I didn't ever think I was going to go back to school, honestly. And a buddy of mine in banking, he decided, and this is right around Great Recession time. He's like, hey, I'm going back to school. You should go with me. No, man, we don't have time for all that. What are you talking about? We have bills, we have mortgages, we have cars. That's not possible. And he sat down with me and we figured out FAFSA and all the stuff. And the number one reason I went to UWT is my friend Scott. I will say that off top. So that's not an accolade to the school with that. That said, I had to find something that I was interested in. And I was already really focused on, I realized that in my work, I'd owned a mortgage company by that time. I'd done lots of different things in finance. And there was something in my heart. I felt that, man, I'm missing something, because I keep seeing folks come back to me because they want to refinance the boat again. This is the third time you refinanced the boat. Sorry, that's an old gripe. But people get in these cycles that I just really saw as dysfunctional. And I don't have the tools to help folks do what I think is better. And so I was already mindful of that. Much of that happened with my accredited financial counseling. But that was even later after finishing my undergrad. But UWT with the Urban Studies program, it really resonated with me because I had been looking at things like Katrina or the instability with, my mom's family comes from West Virginia, coal mining family. My father's family comes from Southeast DC, which is still an area of disinvestment that is hard to live in, you know what I mean? So for me, how do we get here was a big question for me. And that's why I came back. And I felt when I interviewed with the urban studies faculty, a couple of folks, I got the inkling that I could find out and that they were open to helping me navigate that. So that's ultimately between Scott and it wasn't the School of Urban Studies. Now it's the School of Urban Studies, yay. That's what got me to UWT.
That's great. And can you tell us a bit about who the professors, mentors, or people in your life that added to your experience while you were attending?
Oh, sure. We don't have time for all of it. Number one, I want to give props to my number one mentor, Dr. Linda Isham. She was the first person that matched my background. It was hard for me to find that. Even today in nonprofit, I'm kind of a weirdo in that most people that have my background in finance, like, why would you go to nonprofit? It's kind of the thing. Even still, I have buddies that are vice presidents of places. They're like, what are you doing? They don't get it, right? Meeting Dr. Isham it gave me, I think, so even like when we talked about children earlier, a lot of times when you're in an environment where how do I say it specifically? I'll say for my walk and people that are like me. Oftentimes in Black community, and we're not a monolith, there's all different types of all different strata and things that are happening in Black community. That said, when I see someone that's like me succeeding at something that I didn't know about, it gives me tacit permission to also be successful in that. And so that's, and I was a grown man at this point too, right? But meeting Linda was really big for me because she has this, she still has it. She has this background that really, I still haven't met anybody that's like her, just, straight up. But having the financial background, then going into public work, and then going into the academic area, and really having this this deep love and interest in community, that's me. Even though some of it I didn't know yet, I was still searching, trying to figure out what was going on. But she's right here, and she, knowing her helped me. Not only that, but there's one great, and I believe it still exists. There is this survey course that we did that really made me love Tacoma. I had been in the area for 2 decades already, but being able to walking on Pacific and looking at the architecture and what different things meant, you actually got to, in cognitive development, we call it the endowment effect. When when you build that IKEA desk, and then later on your wife, this is real talk for me, later on your wife tries to sell it at a garage sale, there's something in you that's like, you can't get rid of that. I made that. I had to get the little weird, the tool, and I had to put it together. And I had to put some sweat equity in that bad boy. You're not selling it because it's mine, right? I would say, if you're following me, if you have ears to hear what I'm saying, that's what that survey course really did for me also. So beyond Dr. Isham, Dr. Toffin, being able to, social ecology, which I think has a different name or does something different now, that was huge for me. Being able to look at, I won't even go through all this. I told you it's gonna take too long. There are particular classes and professors. So I say Dr. Toffin, I'll say just their last name, doctors, Toffin, Pendris, Deerwechter, Dr. Matt, even with GIS, the one class I took, that was a big deal. I'm missing anybody? Dr. Urena. Right. And even some adjuncts like Jennifer Arnold, professor, that was adjunct or maybe still is. She was in the faculty too for a while. Having all these folks who, frankly, have academic chops, but they're out there. They're out there doing things. They're they have heavy civic engagements. That was a really big deal for me. Just the application and knowing it's not just book stuff. These are things that are happening right now. Turn on your television. It's happening, and it applies, right? So that was huge for me. And then what was the second part of the question, Vanessa?
I believe people that have added to your experience, but I think you answered that perfectly.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah. So if you could go back in time, what would you do differently?
Ooh. If I can go back in time, there's a lot of things. Being that knucklehead 19-year-old doing silly things, but you're not asking about that stuff. I would say really, so if we're thinking about my school opportunity, I'm choosing to, is that okay to use that? Can I at UWT? We'll say at UWT, if I could go back, I would have been involved with Civitas earlier. Civitas was really, really important. Turned out to be a really big deal for me. Being with other folks, just fellows that are looking for the application of the things that we're learning. One thing about urban studies, y'all are gonna keep getting this from me because I got 2 degrees in urban studies, and that's what I love, and I love my professors and all that, right? But one of the things with it is that I believe it really attracts upstanders, folks who want to do something, that see the world. I think a lot of times, and this is no diss on other people, there's all different kinds of ways of being, but I think for many of us, we don't have that reflex inside of us that says this is wrong, somebody should do something about that. That's not how we are in general, at least in my experience. And so we're looking to, out of the frustrations, out of it and joy, what can I do to contribute, and to do so actively, but also intelligently? How do I find folks to link arms with so we can do more? I would say back to the question, is Civitas and really engaging with the kind of student community. I would have done that earlier. It took a while for me because really I was in, and I actually think this is healthy also personally. I was more selfish about, like, I was the one, my professors probably remember, I'm not shy about raising my hand. If you say something interesting, right? I've since learned to step back a little bit more because I can control, I can be too much sometimes, but I was at an axe to grind, and I had things I was super curious and I wanted to understand because I really felt that I could do something. And in fact, I wanted to know more, right? So I would have engaged more that way. And probably I would have focused more and got papers in way earlier, if that's fair to say, just because I found bar none and I don't know if other programs are like this, but if you get your paper done early, you can get it critiqued. So there's really kind of no excuse for getting an A, just don't wait, right? I wish I could say this to my younger self, but the idea just really kind of, you could refine as much as you want because the professors were open to going through it with you. Office hours, all that stuff. I didn't take folks up on office hours as much, but yeah, that's my answer. I would have dug in earlier and better.
That's perfect. And how did your experience at UW Tacoma influence your career pursuits after graduation? Did you face any obstacles or challenges?
Definitely, yeah. So how did it influence? So my experience at UW absolutely influenced my career decisions because I was ruined for normal, truly, in that I knew way before I finished, this is what I need to do for my life. I found my purpose, or I was closer to my purpose rather. So that's how that influenced my search. That said, my very first job after I left undergrad was back to the good old bank because I didn't know what to look for. And so I qualified for like a higher tier of banking because I had my degree. Mind you, at the time that I graduated, there was a massive shift because prior to that, in my space, at least in my financial space, that was it was who you knew. So I could go in like, oh, that's Jeff Dade, he worked for so-and-so, and you do a handshake and you're good to go. That was switching because Great Recession time, all of a sudden you're one of 1,500 applicants, and they don't care about the handshake and who you are. They're running it through their little filter. And if you didn't say the 16 words in your resume or in your letter, you got squished out, right? And that was actually part, I forgot about that actually, Vanessa. That was also part Scott, urban studies, and that fact, because I got turned down for some jobs that I was overqualified for because I didn't have my paper straight. And so out of that frustration, I was like, I need to get this paper because y'all are pissing me off, right? Because like, you don't know, like I'm good enough to do this and you're saying no, like you don't know who I am. There's a whole other like swagger ego thing part of Jeff's sometimes too, but that's what was happening for me. And so when I went out, so I did that. I really felt bad after I left again because I really felt like I sold out. It was a good job and I did it for another 2 years. And it expanded and it was necessary, turns out, for my purpose. Easy to say, hindsight's 2020. But then part of what I did in that time when I was a commercial banker, and I moved to the peninsula. I lived in Port Orchard and had the whole peninsula for Key Bank for business banking, up to 20 million in lending, and left that space. It was a hard time to lend, frankly. Also, underwriting was really battened down, without geeking out too much in that space. But I always kept my ears open for something that I thought might be urban studies, and I was still learning it. And that's honestly, it's part of the reason I wanted to be here today, to speak to folks. I know that people like me, how I was before, exist right now. I know that there are a lot where, what do I do with this urban studies? Because I'm sold, I want to do it. What job can I have? And I'm here to tell everyone, whoever's listening, it is more than planning. Planning's awesome. That is no diss to planning. Planning is amazing. But if you only go for planning jobs, there's a particular kind of that's a particular realm. And there's good jobs there, but there's only so many. It depends on your timing, all that stuff, right? There are all these other things that your background has prepared you for that you may not be thinking about, right? Things like what I do. I use community planning all the time. It is not a traditional planning job. And I'm heavily community focused, right? And so I'm doing a lot of things like rubbing elbows, bringing investor, but also being in the community and talking to my colleague, Brendan Nelson. I'm going to give him props for the term I'm going to use. He uses this kind of subject archetype. He calls Mrs. Johnson. So Mrs. Johnson equals random Black elder in the community. Okay. So a lot of my work is talking and making sure I'm hitting up Mrs. Johnson, like, ma'am, what should I be doing? Did you know about this? Okay. Call and response, that kind of thing. Right. So the barrier for me after leaving was really trying to understand what was available for me. And it took me a couple of years, probably 4 years for me after I graduated with my undergrad to get to the space that I desired. But it was because I didn't know. I had to take that time to figure out like what the avenues were. And so that first job for me was at Sound Outreach up in Hilltop.
Yeah, and you seem very involved in multiple things in the community. What are current projects or initiatives that you are working on in the Hilltop community?
Sure. Yeah, well, one of the things that's really interesting about this work is that it's not just what your job is. I was literally having a conversation with my boss today, and we have these different accounts like where you bill your time to, and we had to create this new kind of cost center situation because there's things I do for like maintenance of the property that we have that's going to be developed. There's other things I do that are more about kind of Hilltop or community engagement at large, but that's specific to our development. But still, there's other things like working with Sound Credit Union, who's coming to Hilltop. That's not a secret. I have to, like, is that confidential? It's not confidential. They're coming up, and we're working with them on things like, you should probably change your name, right? There's a thing about that. Can you do that? Have you listened to community? And then also for me, when I have the ear of corporate entities and what have you, because of my principles that I already had, and then also that were refined with my schooling, my education, part of my mode is I'll develop a funnel that comes to me. And then what I say is, Brendan Nelson, everyone, Fab Five, you need to speak with Chris Jordan. Oh, you're talking about Adika Bell. You should go to Metro Parks. You know what I mean? Every time, just making sure it's not me. Because at the end of the day, I don't live in Hilltop and I didn't grow up in Hilltop. And the people that live in Hilltop, the great community that's there, like you said, 150 years strong Black community. And also, mind you, I'll make sure I say this too, more than Black folks live in Hilltop. Absolutely. I want to make sure I give that shout out. What I and in my work and others are focusing on is the fact that a Black man, which is very rare and unique and precious in the West Coast, came, a mere 4 years after the Emancipation Proclamation. His name's George Putnam Riley. He came from Boston. I want to figure out how he did that. Was it Oregon Trail? Like, what was it, the ship? I still don't know that kind of stuff, right? But I know how difficult it is, how I can face difficulty today in different spaces. And I've lived in Puyallup, I think now or in Washington for like 36 years. So this is home, but maybe we need a green book for what, never mind. That's interesting, right? But just thinking about this man that created this, truly the sanctuary space for folks escaping Jim Crow South, that is meaningful. It's so meaningful. And that's what we hearken to when we talk about Black Hilltop, for example. So, did I even answer your question, Vanessa? Can you say it one more time?
Yeah, you did.
Okay, good. You don't have to say it again. If I answered it, we're golden.
Okay, perfect. And how has getting your degree impacted your family?
Oh, yeah. I would say undergrad wasn't too bad because I think I only had I had a year and a bit that I needed to finish from my time at PLU. My master's, honestly, was tough for my family because I was working a full-time job. One day when I am independently wealthy, I'm absolutely going to, or if I don't get that, I'm going to connect with folks so we can make a bigger fund pool. I want to make a scholarship for working folks. Another one, because they already exist, of course, but it was really difficult that way on my family. And I just I'll give them a shout out right now because Dad was not available. Husband was not available a lot because I'm working all day and then I got a paper due. And then there's a thing for work this weekend and, you know, all the things. So for 2 years, for 2 years, I wasn't very available. So I want to make sure I give that reality. I would do it all over again, but was there mending to do when I came back? Yeah, there was. And this is, I hope this is a space where we can keep it real. I think it is, looking at the crew. But that was a big deal for me. And even, you know, for a while after, I'll give you this, just some real talk, talking to my wife of 23 years now. One of the things that I had to learn was I was done with school. And so I was like, hey, I'm ready. Let's go. I'm available for you. And she's like, hey, like, that's not what we do anymore. Like, you just because you're ready doesn't equal like we're gonna hop too. Like we've established a whole other kind of like rhythm. So I had to respect that. It doesn't seem right because I'm like, hey, I'm available. You want me? Let's go. I want to do this. Sorry, we're doing this already, right? And then, of course, that's my family. That's how my relationships move. But that was something that I didn't foresee and I didn't really think about because it was more, I wouldn't say that particularly with the master's, was necessarily selfish. In some ways it was because I had an extra grind. I wanted to achieve a master's, but I had things I wanted to understand too, if that makes sense. My family didn't necessarily they have other goals. Does that make sense? So it can be tough. Now, that said, I think that they're proud of me. When I can talk to my girls about things we're working on. Matter of fact, my youngest daughter, Zane, she goes to Emerald Ridge High School here in South Hill in Puyallup. And they have a Black student union, which I love because that wasn't the thing at Rogers in the 1990s, right? I did okay, y'all, but it's super cool. We were able to, actually, Shauna and I were both elders for a group called Black Puyallup, and we were able to have the very first, a lot of firsts. We had the first acknowledgement by the Puyallup City Council of Black History Month official. We had the very first Black History Month celebration in the history of Puyallup. And it was amazing, really well. I don't even want to take really a lady named J. Marie, shout out for J. Marie in Puyallup. But we had a group of folks that have been in Puyallup, and Black folks are in Puyallup and have been for years, but we were able to come together. My daughter was approached. She didn't know that I knew the young men, these good looking guys who went to their class. And she was all excited and everything. And, oh, Dad, these guys came today and they were asking about this and that. And well, I want to know if I can interview you for this Black Puyallup thing. She had no clue that I'm actually elder in it, right? And I said, was it Valentine and John? How did you know it's them? Right? Because I'm an old fuddy-duddy, you know how that works. But basically, that was part of the good thing. And that in my studies and how that got to me to my purpose, it expanded into my family spaces too in the community. So yeah,
that may definitely resonate with a lot of students. I would love to open it up for a Q&A now. If anyone has any questions, feel free to unmute or type it in the chat.
Jeff.
Hi.
It's so amazing to hear your story and hear you tell it, having kind of watched it over all these years. And my question is, what would you like to see UW Tacoma do right now?
You know what I would love to see UW Tacoma do? So, there's so much talk, and hopefully I'm not remiss in saying this because I definitely don't know all the plans and all the goings on, right? But one thing that I was really touched by and I was excited by was, this idea of the urban serving university. I would love to see the urban serving university go out into the field, or maybe if it's already happening, to be more overt about those efforts. Because there's so much amazing work that's happening. And, the class that Antoine's right here. Shout out to Antoine, if you want to wave Antoine. We're in a class together right now for the Master's in Community Planning. And one of the cool things is that we're in Hilltop some of the time. We're in the building that I'm helping do interim use with right in the community. It's super cool. It's just, and the reason I approached and started talking to the faculty at urban studies was because I was thinking, man, if when I was in the master's or just anytime I was in class, I would have loved to do this if I knew it is available, right? I love to see more of that because there's so much, you have such a wealth of, I'm just looking at the folks here right now. Man, y'all have just this treasure trove of knowledge and skill and experience that the community, I think, would love to have and is deserving of, frankly, if I can say that. And we're so close. You know, when I was in working with Dr. Isham on some extra things, there's something called the Xenolytic program that you remember, Dr. Hoffman. But I remember how when I was we had extended kind of engagement with classes at McCarver. It'd be like after school types of things. And I remember I have daughters. Little girl comes to me. I'm wearing my UW sweatshirt that I still have. I still rock it. And she came to me and she looked at me. She says, "Can I go to UW?" And I remember thinking, I was like, "Oh my gosh, baby, yes, you can absolutely go to UW." But it hit me though, because if you go out to the playground at McCarver, best view in the city, number one, right? You can see University of Washington, but it might as well be Sacramento, right? You know, ideologically, or like as far as like what is available to me. I wonder what the urban serving university could do to make that different. Yeah, thank you for that.
Thanks, Jeff.
Who else? Gimme.
I've got a 7 o'clock call, but I just want to say thank you, Jeff. And the question that you just asked is one that I am asking as we're going through our strategic planning process, because as I look at it, it's just an incredible opportunity for us to make this urban serving university designation real for communities of color. And to be more engaged and connected. And so asking that question and hoping to do more. That's why I was so excited to sit in tonight. And I think I'm going to see you on Sunday too. I think you're giving, no, not this Sunday. It's the 24th. And you're giving a talk too. So so don't think I'm stalking you. I'm just really interested.
That'll be great. Bucket list check.
I am just really interested in the work that you do. And as you were talking about social ecology, my undergraduate is in social ecology. A lot of people don't know what that is. So you had me from the beginning. So just keep up this incredible work. And thank you. Thank you for being part of this conversation tonight. It's been really inspiring to me.
I appreciate it. And I see you. Thank you. So are we at time? Anybody have some more questions? Because I want to talk if you want to talk.
So Jeff, I'll ask you a question. So how is the work going to encounter the reality of transit coming in and displacement is on the horizon?
Yeah.
So you wanted to say a few words about where things are?
Yeah, for sure. You know, truly, number one, it is super daunting, right? So one of the things that I started saying when I talk to folks is, one, you know, no civilization, no part of society has like figured this out. Like we don't have a wholesale way, like we don't want gentrification, we're going to stop it this way, it's done. Like that's not a thing yet, right? No one has achieved that. But then also, if gentrification, all these market forces that displace, if that is a wave, if you will, part of what we hope to do is teach people to surf and help folks build surfboards, if that makes sense for a metaphor. So I would say at the end of the day, part of the reason that's daunting is even at our very best, let's say for Terra, we're a part of a larger, you know, there's going to be 10 buildings in the next 4 or 5 years that are coming up in Hilltop, right? There's whole other kind of psychological effects of that as well, as your neighborhood actually changes and does it feel like you belong anymore, things like that. But part of the reality too is that even with all that happening, and most of those are really aimed at like the 60% AMI space, which is perfect. And I love being able to say that to you publicly, that we have developers that give a damn and are working at like figuring out how this can pencil, right? But even when all that's successful, it's not enough. It's not enough. You know what I mean? So one, it's daunting. Two, it is super cool to be coming through with fellows and an environment that is so rich with folks who want to do more, right? We are not, when I'm having these conversations, and there's folks I see you here that are you're in spaces, I see Rachel McHugh, you know, in spaces where we're doing things to help and to partner and listen to do better. So it's really encouraging that we are seeking ways to get through. So it is what is that? It's bittersweet, I'd say, right? In that, yay, we're doing something. It feels like we have chops for this. We're not alone. And yet we absolutely know that our best efforts will not be enough right now. So, and that's more, I would say, Dr. Marderis, that's part of kind of my, this kind of that epiphany moment I was talking about earlier, where, man, you know what? I don't get to see the end of this. And I don't know if everyone gets that at some point, but that was like,
tell me about it. I'm not going to see a lot of things.
You know?
So,
Yeah.
but thank you for what you're doing. And I think Forterra is doing great work there. I'm just hoping that more organizations step in. This is not something that one person at a time can tackle. This is a huge undertaking.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually land belongs to the community. So I'm glad you're working on that.
You got it. Thank you.
And thank you for this evening. This is amazing conversation. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you all. Lately, I've been really focused on belonging. And I laugh because, you know, what is it? Confirmation bias, you know? So like when you're looking for the thing, you magically find it, you know? So, but for me, just a lot of things, it just makes sense to me. I see the connection with, bye, good night. I see the connection with belonging. And the reason I say that right now is because I feel that with you all. You're my people. So many of you that I know. And it takes this, like you're saying, Dr. Marderis, we have to be able to link arms and know one another. And even this is like our way of virtual bread breaking, just to continue making these linkages and doing different things and pushing forward, encouraging one another. So I'm very appreciative of this space too. Thank you all for inviting me and listening to me and talking with me.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. As our time is coming to an end, I will turn it back to Shauna.
Thank you, Vanessa. Thank you, JD. I know that's what you like to be called. This was amazing. And to everyone who supported him and showed up, we're truly grateful, especially the ones that were there when he was a student. Thank you so much. We do have a little more information to share with you. As of today, we are one day before our Giving Day, Husky Giving Day, where all of the Huskies get to show out and support students, programs, initiatives on our campus. If you've already joined the Tacoma Husky Landing Platform, thank you very much. Our UW Tacoma Alumni Council will be unlocking funds. So you can help us unlock those funds by joining the Tacoma Husky Landing Platform. And that's where our students will network and get mentoring and things like that from alumni, from community, from friends of the university and things like that. So we encourage you to join, and the link is already in the chat. We're excited. So they will be giving $1,200 to the Student Emergency Aid Fund, which is our UW Tacoma Chancellor's Opportunity Fund, to help students who are in emergencies, as we have seen many of those throughout this pandemic. Glad that we're kind of look like we're coming to an end of it, hopefully here, but definitely check it out. You can pre-populate your profile from LinkedIn into the platform to make it easier to join. But the more we get on there, the better. You can go to our giving page to see what challenges we have. We also have our UW Tacoma Library Challenge. You'll want to look at that and just see the different things that are available. You can be an ambassador for Husky Giving Day just by posting on social media about it. It starts at 12 a.m. tonight and it goes all day. You have 24 hours to support. So I'll go ahead and put those links in the chat. Our next alumni speaker series will be in May, which is also Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. We have something a little special coming up for that. So you'll want to be in the know. I'll go ahead and put a link in the chat to our alumni page where you can find out when it's happening and all of that. And you can also find out when to register. So I will do that, but thank you all for coming. That is it. I bid you adieu. Thank you.